I guess my journey for me started back probably in the early 70s when I was a young child. Um, I was raised I had two brothers and three sisters, so there were six of us in the family. My mom and dad were married, but they were constantly fighting and constantly separated, and so there was never really any structure to my home life. Most of my childhood memories aren't fond memories. Most of them are difficult memories. Don't remember many family vacations or Christmases where we had a great time together. One of my earliest memories as a child, I was about 5 years old, and I remember my dad. We had lived with my mom's parents. We lived upstairs in their house, and there was a back entranceway. And when I was 5 years old, I remember my dad breaking into the house, wanting to hurt my mom. And as a 5-year-old, I remember going to the kitchen and grabbing a knife. And the knife was about this long. And I remember my dad picking me up and asking me what was I going to do with that knife. And I had no idea what to say. And my dad was never abusive to us kids, but he was abusive to my mom. Another story, probably about the same time frame. I was probably 6 years old, and I remember I was at a friend's house, which was 2 doors down, and I remember my mom coming over and hiding from my dad because he was going to beat her. And I remember him breaking in to the house, trying to get to my mom. Another, probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I remember my dad and mom fighting again, and he tried to drown her in the bathtub. And so those were most of my childhood memories were of my mom and dad fighting. I wasn't real close to my siblings. Probably I was closest to my younger brother because he and I would play sports all the time, and that's kind of what we did to take our minds off of what was going on in the house. So he and I would always be outside, either playing basketball or football or baseball or something. We were always playing sports. As I grew up into my teen years, I remember going out for basketball in my 7th grade year, and this is something I'll never forget. I got cut from the team, and I didn't get cut because I wasn't good enough. I got cut because I got grounded and missed numerous practices. So from then on, I never wanted to go out for sports again because I never wanted to be humiliated like that again. That was something that was hard for me because I felt like sports was something that I was good at and something that I could probably succeed in. But again, I just didn't want to do it because I knew that my mom would ground me from that because that's the thing that I loved. So I never did that. So when I wasn't playing sports, I had to fill that time with other things. So as a teenager, probably right around 13, 14 years old, I started stealing things. I would go to we had a store right up the road from our house that had a Pac-Man video game in it, and so we would go up there all the time and play Pac-Man. Well, I would go into that store and I would steal gum, 20, 30 packs of gum at a time, and I would take them to school and I would sell them for $0.25 a piece. And I remember one night being in that store, and we were playing Pac-Man because that's just what we did. I didn't have any supervision, so I was always able to do that kind of stuff. And so we were playing Pac-Man, and I remember going up to the lady that worked at the counter, the cashier, and asking her if I could run home and get a pizza and bring it back up and eat it while we were playing Pac-Man, and she told me that I could do that. Well, I had already stolen a pizza. I had it in my jacket when I went up to her. And so I went outside, and about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, came back in, got the pizza out of my jacket, came back in, cooked it, and ate it right in front of her. So, that I was very bold in the stuff that I did, and didn't have much respect for my elders at that time. Well, I remember when I was 15 years old, a friend of mine, we were walking down a road, and we walked by a motorcycle shop. And in the front of the motorcycle shop, there was a go-kart. Not just like a small go-kart, like a pretty big go-kart, nice go-kart. And we started talking, and we talked about stealing it. So we decided we were going to steal this go-kart. So we walked in to the store. The store was pretty busy that day, so we knew that there wasn't, people watching us or anything. So we walked outside, we started it up. I hopped on it, started steering it. He was on the back of it, controlling the gas and how fast we were going. And so we stole this go-kart. Well, we had taken the go-kart and we had hid it in the woods for a couple days. And we decided we wanted to take the go-kart out, or he decided he wanted to take the go-kart out, and asked me if I wanted to go with him. Well, I was supposed to go to my dad's that day, so I told him that I wasn't going to be able to go, but he kept, talking me into taking it out. So I thought, yeah, let's go ahead and take it out. So we took it out and we started riding it. And next thing we know, there's a couple guys on motorcycles who actually worked for the store that we stole from, along with cop cars, and they had caught us. So they took us down to the jail, Stark County Jail, and started questioning us. And we let them know that we had stole it and what we had done. And I was 15 years old at the time, and I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to live this way. I don't want to continue to do this stuff. Well, I had gotten 6 months probation and a fine, and I almost had to go to Indian River, which is a juvenile detention home for bad kids. And I knew I didn't want to go there, so I thought I need to straighten up and to act right. But that lasted probably for about a year, and then I remember probably being about 16 years old, going to a mall with a friend of mine, and at this time my mom and dad have been divorced, and my mom had a couple different boyfriends, and I remember one of her boyfriends would pay me to go to the mall and steal things for him, jewelry, clothing, whatever. And I remember being in the mall, and I had stole a necklace, a gold chain, and I remember two ladies running up to me, grabbing me by my arms, saying, "We're from the Stark County Security Service. We'd like to talk to you." And I took a deep breath, threw my arms up, and then just took off running. And again decided that I need to stop doing this, because this isn't a path I want to go down. So I did. I got away from the stealing and doing things like that. Well, in my late teens, I had a girlfriend probably from the time I was 17 till probably up until I met Michelle, which was probably around 21 years old, or 22 years old, I think. But we had dated for 5 years, and we had broken up, and I had never went out or never partied or drank or anything like that. Well, that's when I started, hanging out with some of my buddies, and we would go out, we'd go to nightclubs, we would drink, and I hated alcohol. I hated the taste of it, but I would do it because it loosened me up, and it would help me talk to females. So, but it wasn't like I had to have alcohol, but again, I just did it because, it loosened me up. So, started drinking, started going out, ended up meeting Michelle at a nightclub called BB McLean's, and we had our first date. I'll never forget our first date. I practically had to beg her to go out with me. Me and two of my buddies, we did a triple date, and I remember talking to her and my friends and her friends talking to her, convincing her to go out with me. And we went to a place called Chi-Chi's and had a great time. You know, we laughed a lot, and I was able to get another date with Michelle. And we had dated probably, I would say, over 2 months before we ever did anything, and which was not normal for people that weren't Christians that were going out, because most people that were going out like that, they were going out for one reason. So that was one thing I really respected about her, was that she wasn't that way. Well, I remember probably early February of 1990, we had been dating for probably about 5 months. And I remember her coming to me, telling me that she had missed her period. And my first thought was, I'm not ready to be a dad. I can't do this. So we had talked about, what we were going to do and how we were going to handle the situation. And I'm ashamed to say this, but I had brought up the fact that maybe we should just get an abortion. The way I grew up, that was just like a normal thing. It was just something that you did, and it was no big deal. But she didn't want to do that, and she said that what she would do is she would just move to Youngstown and live with her dad and raise her on her own. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be that type of person, because that's how my dad was, and I didn't want to be like my dad. My dad had probably, I would say, about 13 kids, and really didn't take care of any of them. So, I didn't want that for a child that I was responsible for. So I decided that I need to be a man, and I need to grow up, and I need to ask Michelle to marry me. So that's what I did. And I did it in a very romantic way. When I asked her, I think she was doing the dishes. So I went up behind her and asked her if I could help her with the dishes and if she would marry me. So she loves that story, but we ended up getting married in May of 1990. And at the time, Michelle was 5 months pregnant. And not many people knew. When we got married, you couldn't tell that she was pregnant at all in her wedding dress. So we decided to get married. Looking back now, when it first happened, I thought, I can't do this. Looking back now, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Not only just because I had my daughter, but it made me a better person. And so we had Marissa. She was probably 3 or 4 years old, and we had talked about maybe starting to go to church. Where Michelle worked, there was a lady that she worked with named Nancy Romans, who was a member of Akron Baptist Temple, and she had invited Michelle to come to church with her. And Michelle would always ask me to come to church, and I was big into sports, and I played basketball in basketball leagues. I played in softball leagues. I played in football leagues. Well, my football league was every Sunday morning, so I wasn't able to come to church because I had football, and at the time that was more important to me. Football was my God, or sports was my God back then. If I wasn't playing sports, I was watching sports. So Michelle started to come to church. She started bringing Marissa to church, and they would come home and tell me, what a great time they had at church and the stuff that they had learned. And so I decided that I need to start going to church with her. So, but going back probably a few months prior to that, where Michelle would work, there was a guy named Art Fowler, and he would come into Michelle's office, and he was friends with Michelle's boss. And he would talk to Michelle about me and ask her questions about me, if I was saved, what my thought process was about God and things like that. And I remember one day I was sick, and I called off work, and it's very rare that I ever call off work. And I just happened to call off that day, and Michelle called me and said, Art would like to come over and talk to you. And so I said, that's fine. He can come over and talk to me. So he had come to my house and started talking to me, and he was going through the plan of salvation for me. And he kept asking me, do you know how you can get to heaven? Do you know what it takes to get to heaven? And I didn't know why he kept asking me that question. So finally I said to him, no, I don't know. And I had gone to church when I was younger. I was part of a youth group when I was younger, but it was just kind of something I did, and we did it for fun, probably like a lot of you now. And so I asked God in my heart that day with him. He had led me to the Lord. And it took probably about 2 years before I really became serious about my relationship with God. So decided I needed to start going to church with Michelle and with Marissa, and to be the godly example that I needed to be. So we would go to church, and we would sit up in the balcony. I remember we would stand up and we would sing the songs, and I didn't sing because I didn't want people looking at me or whatever. I always thought someone was going to be looking at me, judging me or whatever. So we would sit down, we'd listen to the message, and then every week for probably 6 months, they would do the invitation at the end of the message. And every time they would start the invitation, we would get up and we would walk out. So people probably thought we were very spiritual because we went forward every time they did the invitation, but actually we were leaving because I needed to go to football. So shortly after that, I decided, what, I need to be a godly man. I need to be an example for not only my wife but for my daughter. So I decided that I wasn't going to play football on Sundays anymore, that I was going to focus on going to church. So we had started coming to church. We started to get to know people, because we were staying around talking to people. And we were asked to get involved in ministry. And so we had talked about it, we had prayed about it, and I felt like God wanted us to be a part of youth ministry, but not high school ministry. I thought like kids, because I figured that they're not going to be able to ask me questions that I'm not going to be able to answer. So we would get involved with 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, but that's not what God had for us. He called us in the youth ministry, and I remember when we first started, how I felt when the kids that were in the youth department at that time, how they accepted us in and how they loved on us. And I had never felt that before in my life. So that was something, good and something positive. So, we continued to stay in youth ministry. Now, we, in our home, God was first in most things, but not everything. I still felt like when it comes to our finances that I would be able to handle all that stuff. So we had been in youth ministry for probably 10, 12 years, probably 10 years. And we started having some marital issues. Again, because our finances were kind of spiraling out of control, and I was kind of hiding things from Michelle and not letting her know exactly what was going on. And we came to a point in our lives where we brought up the word divorce. And again, I did not want to be that person. Like I wanted to be committed to my wife and to my family. I didn't want my child to be raised by somebody else. I wanted to be there to raise her. So we decided that we were going to get counseling. So we went to a Christian counselor for a few months, and we had brought up a lot of things that we never really talked about. And it really helped our marriage. But still, I was stubborn, and I still didn't put God first in our finances. So back in late 2008, I had been working I was a car salesman, and that's when the economy really went south, and we really started struggling with our finances, to the point where we had to make a decision on whether or not we were going to be able to keep our home. And this is the home, our first home that we bought, our home that we raised our daughter in, that we celebrated every Christmas. And I remember probably late 2009 realizing that we weren't going to be able to keep our home. And that was a tough time in our lives because, again, that's what you know, and that's what you've always known, for the past 16 years. And fortunately for us, we were able to sell our home, and we didn't make anything on it, but we were able to sell it for what we owe, and we ended up, that was in 2010, March of 2010. And that's when I decided that, I need to come up with a plan, and that involves God and puts God first, not only in our marriage, but in our finances and in everything that we did. And as I look back on those situations, as I look back to when I found out Michelle was pregnant, as I look back to when I did some of the things that I did as I was a child. So it was probably back in right around 2010 where I decided that I needed to really focus on God and put God first in everything I do, including my finances. So it took me probably until I was in my early 40s to realize that. And the nice thing is for you guys, you have that opportunity to start right now. And I encourage you to not wait. I'm Larry McLaughlin, and I am second.